Reports trickled into the Galactic Empire's Central Command, detailing unusual movements in the far reaches of space. Unsettling whispers circulated about a fleet being assembled by the humans, an insignificant species the Empire had encountered before, their ships and technology laughably primitive, in comparison. The Imperial intelligence officers tasked with analyzing these reports did so with an air of detached amusement, barely bothering to mask their contempt. To them, the idea that humanity could muster anything more than a minor nuisance was absurd. The officers compiled the data, forwarding it up the chain of command with brief, dismissive summaries. The higher-ranking officials who received these reports were even less concerned. After all, the Empire had faced and crushed far more advanced civilizations in the past. The humans? They were barely out of their planetary cradle the last time anyone cared to check. Their ships had been clunky, slow, and armed with weapons that would barely scratch the paint on an Imperial cruiser. The notion that these beings could pose any threat was laughable. In the vast, opulent halls of the Empire's command, the idea of human advancement was a joke. Senior leaders, draped in the finery of their station, discussed the reports with smug grins. One by one, they dismissed the concerns with casual arrogance, treating the intelligence as little more than a distraction from their more pressing issues, like squabbling over the latest territorial acquisitions or planning their next grand conquest. A few, however, felt a twinge of unease. They remembered the stubbornness of the human spirit, the way they had refused to bow completely despite being vastly outmatched in earlier encounters. But when they voiced these concerns, they were met with ridicule and scorn. How could a species so backward possibly pose a threat? The Empire's war machine was unparalleled, its fleet the largest and most advanced in the known galaxy. Surely, these humans were no more than an annoyance, a minor challenge at best. The official stance became clear: humanity's fleet, whatever it was, would be swiftly and decisively crushed. The Empire's leaders scoffed at the idea of deploying their top-tier forces for this task. They allocated just enough resources to make a show of force, confident that even a fraction of their might would be more than sufficient. The whole affair was treated as a formality, a chance to remind the galaxy of the Empire's dominance. Preparations began, but they were half-hearted. The Empire did not deem it necessary to mobilize their elite forces. Instead, they sent a fleet of moderate strength, enough, they believed, to overwhelm any resistance the humans might offer. This was not war, in their eyes. It was a routine operation, a simple demonstration of power. As they readied their ships and planned their strategies, a sense of overconfidence permeated the ranks. Victory was a foregone conclusion. The Empire's propaganda machines began churning out the narrative of a glorious, inevitable triumph. The populace was assured that the human threat would be neutralized quickly, with minimal effort. In the grand scheme of things, it would be a footnote in the Empire's history, a minor skirmish, barely worth remembering. The Empire's leaders, basking in their certainty, failed to see the subtle shifts in the reports that continued to come in. They missed the growing indications that this human fleet was unlike anything seen before. Dismissive as always, they overlooked the small, yet significant, details, the signs that humanity might have learned, adapted, and perhaps even thrived in the years since their last encounter. But the Empire was too caught up in its own grandeur to notice. They had grown used to winning, accustomed to their place at the top of the galactic hierarchy. To them, the idea of losing, especially to humans, was not just unlikely, it was impossible. And so, with blind confidence, they sent their fleet forward, ready to claim an easy victory over what they believed was a laughable opponent. Little did they know, they were about to face a force far more formidable than they could have ever imagined. The humans had been preparing too, quietly in the shadows, away from the prying eyes of the Empire. They had learned from their past defeats, evolved their tactics, and built their fleet not for show, but for survival. The stage was set, and the Empire was marching towards a confrontation that would shatter their illusions and change the course of history forever. The Empire's fleet moved out with unwavering confidence, a display of sheer power that was meant to remind the galaxy of their unassailable dominance. The ships, gleaming with the latest technology and bristling with weaponry, cut through the stars like a knife through butter. For the officers aboard these vessels, The mission was almost routine, a show of force to crush a small, insignificant threat. The human fleet, as they had been led to believe, would crumble at the first sign of the Empire's might. As the two fleets closed the distance, anticipation turned to bewilderment. The human ships came into view, and the first impressions were less than impressive. They appeared old, outdated, almost as if they had been pulled from some forgotten scrapyard. The hulls were pockmarked and dull, their design lacking the sleek, menacing elegance of Imperial craft. The initial scans revealed little in the way of advanced technology. It was as if the humans had cobbled together a fleet from the remnants of past eras, a patchwork of barely functional relics. Imperial officers exchanged looks of amusement and disdain. This was supposed to be the great human threat? Some even questioned why they had bothered to come at all. Surely, this wasn't worth the effort. They joked about the humans' lack of understanding, mocking their outdated ships and speculating on how quickly they would surrender once the shooting started. The consensus was clear: this would be over in minutes, a waste of time that could have been better spent elsewhere. The command to fire was given with little fanfare. A few officers barely paid attention, more focused on their personal matters than the battle at hand. The first shots were fired, and the Empire's fleet expected immediate devastation. But instead of crumpling under the barrage, the human ships did something unexpected. They moved, swiftly, fluidly, in a way that defied their apparent bulk and age. The laughter aboard the Imperial ships faded into silence, replaced by confusion. The human fleet responded with a precision and coordination that was shocking. Their maneuvers were tight, disciplined, executed with a level of skill that suggested they were anything but the rusty relics they appeared to be. What should have been an easy victory began to feel strangely off balance. The Empire's officers, once relaxed, now leaned forward in their seats, eyes narrowing at the tactical displays. The human ships, despite their crude exteriors, were dodging, weaving, and countering with a level of sophistication that was wholly unexpected. And then the human fleet fired back. What followed was a display of power and tactical brilliance that shattered the Empire's confidence. The weapons that the human ships unleashed were not the outdated, ineffective systems they had anticipated. Instead, they were devastatingly advanced, cutting through the Empire's shields and hulls with terrifying efficiency. The first Imperial ship to be hit erupted in a ball of fire, its destruction sending shockwaves through the fleet, not just physical, but psychological. This was not the battle they had prepared for. Panic began to spread as the human ships, once dismissed as laughable, began to systematically dismantle the Empire's forces. They moved as if they were anticipating every move, exploiting weaknesses in the Imperial formation with ruthless precision. What was meant to be a quick, decisive strike turned into a chaotic struggle for survival. The Empire's superior numbers and technology were rendered meaningless against the humans' unanticipated tactics and firepower. The Imperial officers who had been so confident moments before now found themselves grappling with a reality they were unprepared for. The humans were not only holding their ground, they were pushing back, and hard. Every attempt to regain control was met with a counter that left the Empire reeling. The human fleet was proving to be a force unlike any they had encountered before, and the realization that they had severely underestimated their opponent began to set in. As the battle raged on, the Empire's arrogance was stripped away, replaced by a cold, creeping fear. What had started as a routine mission was turning into a nightmare. The human fleet, once thought to be nothing more than a nuisance, was now threatening to destroy the very force that had been sent to annihilate it. And with each passing moment, it became clearer that the Empire had walked straight into a trap, one that was tightening around them with every move the humans made. As the battle intensified, the Empire's fleet threw everything they had at the human ships. What had begun as a confident offensive now spiraled into a desperate struggle for control. The Imperial commanders, who had initially been so sure of their victory, now faced a stark and terrifying reality. The human fleet, far from being the collection of outdated relics they had assumed, was something else entirely, something deadly and devastatingly efficient. Every time an Imperial ship engaged, it found itself outmaneuvered, outgunned, and outthought. The human ships, which had appeared so clumsy and inferior at first glance, now moved with a terrifying precision. Their attacks were calculated, their defenses impenetrable. The Empire's advanced targeting systems, which had never failed before, suddenly found themselves baffled by the human maneuvers. Missiles that should have struck true veered off course. Laser blasts that should have torn through hulls were absorbed or deflected by unseen technologies. It was as if the human ships were playing a different game entirely, one the Empire had no idea existed. The weapons they unleashed were beyond anything the Imperial forces had prepared for. Powerful energy blasts that cut through the strongest shields as if they were paper, projectiles that moved faster and hit harder than anything in the Empire's arsenal. With each devastating strike, another Imperial ship was reduced to debris, another piece of the Empire's invincible image shattered. The realization dawned slowly at first, a creeping dread that spread through the Imperial ranks like a virus. The reports coming in were too consistent, too damning to be ignored. The human fleet was not merely holding its own, it was systematically dismantling the Empire's forces. And the Empire, with all its might and all its supposed superiority, could do nothing to stop it. Panic began to take hold. Orders were barked out in increasingly frantic tones, but nothing seemed to work. Every strategy the Empire employed was countered almost before it began. The human ships anticipated their moves, adjusted their tactics, and struck with deadly accuracy. It was as if they had seen this battle play out before and were merely following a script, one that the Empire had no part in writing. The Imperial commanders, once so sure of their dominance, now found themselves questioning everything. How had they been so blind? How had they allowed themselves to be led into this trap? The answers were as elusive as the human ships themselves, slipping through their fingers as their fleet was torn apart piece by piece. Amid the chaos, the leader of the Imperial fleet, a seasoned commander who had never known defeat, made a desperate decision. He opened a direct communication channel to the human fleet, his voice tinged with a mix of anger, frustration, and a growing fear he could no longer suppress. He demanded to speak with the human commander, to understand how they had pulled off this deception, how they had turned the tables so completely. The response came after a moment of tense silence. The human commander's voice was calm, almost casual, in stark contrast to the chaos unfolding around them. There was no gloating, no mocking tone, just a simple, matter-of-fact explanation. Humanity, he explained, had spent years perfecting the art of deception. They had learned from every encounter, every defeat, and had turned those lessons into their greatest weapon. The ships the Empire had dismissed as outdated were in fact highly advanced, their true capabilities hidden beneath layers of obfuscation. The humans had allowed the Empire to see what they wanted to see, had played on their arrogance and overconfidence, and had drawn them into a battle they were never meant to win. Every aspect of the human fleet, from its appearance to its tactics, had been carefully crafted to exploit the Empire's weaknesses. And now, with the Empire's fleet crumbling and their illusions shattered, the human commander made it clear that this was just the beginning. The humans had no intention of stopping here. They had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, and they were ready to claim their place among the stars, not as the prey they had been, but as predators. The Imperial commander, left speechless, could only watch as the human fleet continued its relentless assault. The truth was undeniable now. They had underestimated humanity, and it had cost them dearly. The battle was lost, the Empire's fleet in ruins, and the galaxy was about to witness the rise of a new power, one that had mastered the art of war in ways the Empire had never imagined. The truth, now fully revealed, hit the Empire with a force stronger than any weapon. Humanity had not only survived under the radar, but had thrived, evolving into a formidable force that mastered the art of war through deception and strategy. The human commander's words echoed in the minds of the Imperial officers, words that exposed the Empire's arrogance and short-sightedness. The humans had been playing a long game, and the Empire had walked right into their trap. As the battle raged on, the Empire's fleet began to unravel. The initial confusion had turned into a full-blown rout as human ships targeted key vessels with precision. One by one, the Empire's ships were disabled or destroyed, their defenses crumbling under the sustained and calculated assault. The humans knew exactly where to strike, each hit driving the Empire further into disarray. What had started as a simple engagement had devolved into a nightmare for the once dominant fleet. The Empire's advanced technology, so often the cornerstone of their superiority, proved useless against the humans' relentless tactics. Shields failed, weapon systems malfunctioned, and the once organized fleet turned into a chaotic mess. The humans had studied the Empire, learned their patterns, and exploited their weaknesses with ruthless efficiency. It was clear now that the Empire had been outmatched from the start, not in numbers or raw power, but in intellect and strategy. Desperation set in as the Empire's fleet tried to regroup, but every move was anticipated, every strategy countered. The humans had planned for this, laying traps within traps, ensuring that no matter what the Empire did, they would find themselves outmaneuvered. Panic spread through the ranks, orders were given and countermanded, but nothing could stop the relentless advance of the human fleet. In a last-ditch effort, the Empire attempted to retreat, hoping to save what remained of their once proud fleet. But the humans had foreseen this too. Escape routes were already blocked, corridors of retreat cut off with surgical precision. The Empire's ships, now surrounded, had nowhere to go. The realization was crushing: there would be no escape, no regrouping, no second chance. The Empire, for all its power and glory, was trapped, caught in a net woven by a species they had once deemed insignificant. From a safe distance, the Empire's leadership watched the battle unfold, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. They had been so sure of their victory, so confident in their fleet's superiority, that the idea of defeat had never crossed their minds. Now, as they witnessed the systematic destruction of their forces, the full weight of their failure began to sink in. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. Ship after ship fell, each one a blow to the Empire's pride and power. The humans showed no mercy, their tactics precise and their aim deadly. They were dismantling the Empire piece by piece, erasing any hope of recovery. The once mighty fleet, the pride of the Empire, was being torn apart before their very eyes, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. In the final moments of the battle, the remaining Imperial ships, battered and broken, drifted aimlessly in space. The humans had done what was once thought impossible: they had brought the Empire to its knees. The battlefield, now littered with the wreckage of Imperial vessels, stood as a stark reminder of the consequences of arrogance and underestimation. The Empire's leadership, who had watched with such confidence at the beginning, now stared in stunned silence, their empire crumbling before them. The humans had not only survived, they had triumphed. Through deception, strategy, and an unyielding will to fight, they had achieved what no other species had managed to do. The Empire, once feared across the galaxy, was now in ruins, its fleet decimated, its power broken. The lesson was clear: the galaxy had changed, and the humans, once underestimated and dismissed, were now a force to be reckoned with. The downfall of the Empire was complete, and a new era was about to begin, one in which humanity would rise from the shadows and claim its place among the stars. The battle was over, but the echoes of its impact would resonate across the galaxy for years to come. What remained of the Empire's once mighty fleet limped back to their home territories, battered, broken, and carrying with them the horrifying tales of their defeat. The survivors, haunted by what they had witnessed, spoke of a human fleet that defied all logic, a force that had appeared weak but struck with unmatched ferocity. The stories they brought back were filled with disbelief and fear, a stark contrast to the arrogance they had left with. As these tales spread throughout the Empire, they ignited a firestorm of political turmoil. The once unshakable confidence of the Empire's leadership was shattered, replaced by a desperate scramble to assign blame. Accusations flew in every direction. How had this been allowed to happen? Who had underestimated the humans so gravely? The political elite, once united in their belief in the Empire's invincibility, now turned on each other, each faction seeking to protect its own interests and shift responsibility away from itself. The reality of the Empire's vulnerability sank in hard. For the first time in centuries, they were forced to confront the possibility that they were no longer the supreme power they had always believed themselves to be. The humans, a species they had barely considered worthy of notice, had exposed the flaws in their overconfident assumptions and shattered their aura of invincibility. The repercussions were immediate and profound, as the Empire's grip on its vast territories began to weaken, and whispers of rebellion and dissent grew louder. Across the galaxy, the news of the Empire's defeat at the hands of humanity spread like wildfire. The reaction was a mix of disbelief, shock, and a growing sense of awe. Humanity, once considered a minor player on the galactic stage, was now viewed with a new, uneasy respect. The other species, who had long feared the Empire's dominance, now looked to the humans with a mixture of hope and fear. Hope that perhaps the Empire was not as unbeatable as it seemed, fear that humanity, with its newfound power, might pose a threat to them as well. For humanity, this victory was more than just a battle won, it was a declaration to the galaxy. No longer would they be seen as the underdogs, the species to be pitted or ignored. They had earned their place among the stars, not through sheer force, but through cunning, strategy, and an understanding of their enemies' weaknesses. The humans had shown that they were not to be underestimated, that they could stand toe-to-toe with the mightiest forces in the galaxy and emerge victorious. In the aftermath, the human commander reflected on the path that had led them here. It had not been an easy journey, but it had been necessary. Deception had been their greatest weapon, allowing them to turn the Empire's arrogance against itself. The commander mused on the folly of their enemies' overconfidence, how the Empire's belief in its own superiority had blinded it to the truth. In contrast, humanity had embraced its underdog status, using it to lull the Empire into a false sense of security before delivering the decisive blow. But the commander also knew that this victory was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and while the Empire had been humbled, it was still a force to be reckoned with. The humans had made their mark, but they would need to remain vigilant. The galaxy's other powers would be watching closely, some with newfound respect, others with envy or fear. Humanity's rise would not go unchallenged, and the next steps would be crucial in determining their future. As the commander looked out at the stars, a sense of resolve settled in. The humans had proven themselves, but they could not afford to rest on their laurels. The battle had been won, but the war for their place in the galaxy was far from over. The commander knew that humanity would need to continue adapting, learning, and growing stronger. The deception that had served them so well would still be needed, but now, they also had the attention of the galaxy. They would need to balance their newfound power with wisdom and caution. The story, for now, closed on a note of quiet determination. The Empire had been dealt a severe blow, but it was not entirely defeated. Humanity had risen, but its journey was far from complete. The galaxy, once ruled by a single dominant power, was now a place of uncertainty and potential. And as the humans prepared for what lay ahead, they knew that this victory was not the end, but merely the beginning of a new era, one where they would carve out their destiny among the stars.